I would probably take an average 1-2 grinder playing his A game over an average 25-50 grinder playing his C game any day.
You're listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. Each week, you'll get to peek inside the greatest minds in the game and discover what makes them successful.
Mental toughness separates those that can't handle the stress.
If you're going to treat it like an amateur, you're probably going to have amateur results.
Now here's your host, Elliot Rowe.
Hey, Elliot Rowe here. I'm very excited to announce that for the next few episodes, Stephen Baker will be guest hosting the show. Stephen has experience both as a professional poker player, strategic coach, and now a member of my mindset performance coaching world. I can confidently say that Stephen's one of the world's leading experts in poker mindset and performance, and I'm really excited to hear the conversations he has with some fantastic guests. And with that, here's Stephen.
Hello, and welcome to the Mindset Advantage podcast. My name is Stephen Baker, and I'm a mindset and high performance coach, and I work with some of the top professional poker players in the world. My guest today is Dr. Bryce Appelbaum, who is a neuro-optometrist. He works in the performance field, and he will share with us how your vision is not simply the same as your eyesight, and how it is impacting on your focus, emotional control, decision-making, and fatigue at the poker tables, and what you can do about it given his expertise. So without further ado, let's get to it and hear from Dr. Appelbaum. So Bryce, welcome. Really good to see you. We've had some chats before, but I really wanted to introduce you to the audience. And I want you to just start by maybe describing your own journey. Neuro-optometry is not a phrase which most people will be super familiar with. Just tell us a little bit about what it is and what led you into this field.
Love to, and such a pleasure to be here. So excited for this conversation because it's for sure going to be eye-opening for many people, pun intended there. So first, neuro-optometry, a lot of people haven't heard of it. It is specialized training, clinical experience in functional vision problems and visual perceptual problems, really recognizing that there is a brain attached to the eyes, and visual function is a direct reflection of brain function. And so that can be, how the brain uses the information the eyes are sending it is really what this is all about. So whether that's the control of the inside muscles of the eyes, the accommodative system, the outside muscles of the eyes, the version system, the tracking system, the depth perception, we can all use our eyes to rewire the software of our brain to change, to optimize, to enhance how we use vision. And that directly relates to so many areas of life, so many areas of performance that require intimate eye-brain integration. And I really am a product of this work. I attribute all of my success in life, athletically, academically, even interpersonally, to this work. When I was a child, I was a complete mess. I was lost on the soccer field. I had no idea what was going on in the classroom. And I had these visual developmental delays, which meant I hadn't learned how to use my eyes efficiently together as a team yet. I had poor depth perception. I was really feeling like a turtle stuck in a shell in so many areas of life. And fortunately, did the right type of work, was given the opportunity to do vision training and sensory integration-based occupational therapy, and really went from a reluctant reader to an avid reader, from the last one picked on sports teams to a stud athlete, and from this insecure kid to a confident kid because I really trained my visual brain to have vision unlock my potential. And so now I'm just so grateful to be able to offer this to the world because so many people don't know what's possible yet. And that's why I'm so grateful we're talking about all this today.
Absolutely. And what I'd like to talk about is you touched there in your answer on just quite how far-reaching your area of expertise is. It's not just about what I have to do and go to the optician every now and then and say, hey, do I need a new prescription? You've taken it into the performance field, and you've already touched on the idea that this isn't just about how clearly we see, its impacts on our entire brain function.
Yeah.
And you've taken your particular expertise and you've taken it. I know you also do work in the medical field, helping people who've had traumatic brain injury of various levels, post-concussion syndrome and so on. But you've also taken it into the performance field and you've worked with professional athletes, professional sports teams at a very high level. Could you talk a little bit about that, how you got into that and the kind of impact it can have? Maybe there are some good examples of where you've managed to really transform somebody, not in the sense that, you need a pair of glasses, because you're not going to see that very often on the basketball field or court or the baseball field, but, just at a wider level, these performance and focus impacts of your work.
Yeah. And it really started for me about a dozen years ago or so, where I was given an amazing opportunity to evaluate all the draft picks for a professional basketball team, for an NBA team. And they didn't want to look at eyesight. They wanted to look at vision. And we can talk about the difference there. But the opportunity was to identify exactly how somebody's brain was using their eyes, assess visual development, visual cognitive development, see where the gaps were so that this team could recognize, is this a player worth investing in? And so we would find these players who already had solid functional visual skills and abilities, and then we'd find many who had these massive holes, massive areas of opportunity. And so, I remember the first draft night, I'm on the call with the front office and their picks coming up, and they're like, all right, they share the guy they're going to pick. And he was one of the lowest on my rankings. And I started to freak out a little bit. And they picked him. They called me right after and they said, all right, you said this guy here has the biggest opportunity for improvement because he's not functioning anywhere close to his potential. We're sending him to you tomorrow. Get going. And then we're going to get an entirely different player out of this. And so it was an immediate, all right, let's roll. And then that was really the launch point for working with a lot of teams to help them recognize who really had that opportunity to maximize their capabilities. Because so much of vision and functional vision it's all developed through our life experiences, and it's all developed through the right sequencing of learning. So it's either learned at the appropriate sequence or not, and then that leads to these vision imbalances. So the player they drafted was somebody who had really poor depth perception and had a hard time seeing the court from other perspectives other than his own and learning a playbook. And his job was just to rebound and be very focal, very localized in one specific skill set. But they wanted to know, can we get more out of this guy? Because if he's going to have multiple contracts and be in the league for a while, rebounding, that's not going to do it.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is this guy, we brought him from about a kindergarten level in terms of visual cognitive development to about 18, 19 years old by putting him through novel visual experiences, using his eyes to rewire his brain, but to establish synergy between the visual processing centers, the language processing centers, the depth perception centers, to really allow his brain to function the way in which it's wired and should be wired, but he had all these roadblocks in place.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, you actually touched on something which I think will be a nice segue into how all of this is going to be applicable to poker, but let's just quickly deal with that distinction between vision and eyesight.
Yeah.
Could you explain the significance of that distinction?
Love to. Healthcare, all doctors, they really have it wrong about the eyes. I mean, you go to an eye doctor, they're making sure you can see the tiny letters on that far chart in the dark room and giving you the right glasses or contacts to help support that. But eyesight is just a symptom. It's our ability to focus light clearly, and that's what glasses or contacts support. Vision is so much more complex. Vision is brain, and how our brain filters, stores, processes, organizes all the information coming in through the eyes to be able to derive meaning and then direct the appropriate action. So eyesight is our ability to see. Vision is brain, and functional vision problems are brain problems, and they're treatable, they're reversible. for any brain at any age because we know how much neuroplasticity all of our brains have. We just have to know what work to do, the right work, and be motivated to do it.
Yeah, that's a really good way of stating it, because ultimately poker players are mental athletes and they're using their brain. And it's really interesting because I've just started, and we'll talk about it later, your Screen Fit program, which is very much directed at people who are using their screens a lot of the time, but not just for that. But it's really interesting in the questionnaire at the beginning to assess where I'm at. It asked me, amongst other questions, how often do you find yourself skipping words when you're reading? Now, I spent my whole career as a lawyer. I used to read huge amounts the night before a case. And I guess I kind of got used to just being able to scan quickly and pick out what was relevant. But equally, when I'm reading a novel now, I love reading novels. Part of the point is you absorb all of the words. You don't just say, okay, where's the real point on this page? And I noticed that I'm doing that more, which ultimately sounds like a bit of a focus problem, which is in some way probably related to my vision.
Not probably, I would say without question. And, reading a passage and skipping over words where you're skipping a not or an un completely changes the comprehension and the tone of the passage. And so often when our eyes and brains are functioning, working at different speeds, it's hard to control our eye movements across a page. And we learn to really scan to kind of bring our visual attention, bring our eye movements to the longer words and the words in the right position that allow us to get the gist. If you're having to read a really dry contract as an attorney or go through Excel spreadsheets, you can't miss letters or words, right? I mean, that completely throws everything off. So, our ability to focus our mind is so deeply related with our ability to focus our eyes. And if you can't control your eye movements and the ability to focus, you can't control your mind and your ability to sustain visual attention, especially over time.
And that is going to lead us probably, at least in part, to answer the next question I've got for you, because, I suppose some people listening to this might say, well, I can absolutely see how your area of expertise is going to help a baseball player, a basketball player. Of course, your ability to see things, respond to them, depth perception, and all of these things, that's great. That's obvious. But as long as I'm a poker player, as long as I can see the cards, the chips, my opponents for a live player, or if I'm an online player, as long as I can see all the tables on my screen, then I can't see how there's a competitive advantage in working on this. Maybe we've kind of given a bit of a spoiler as to one of the advantages, but how would you respond to that?
Yeah. So poker and functional vision are connected so much more deeply than most people realize. Poker is not just a game of math and strategy and psychology. It's a game of visual processing, pattern recognition, attention control, situational awareness. Functional vision is the system that allows your brain to make sense of what your eyes take in. And poker demands almost every one of the components involved. So the ability to read the table efficiently, that's our peripheral awareness. And we could talk about this, in depth, where strong peripheral vision allows players to track multiple players' actions without moving and staring their eyes directly at them, or notice chip stack changes or betting motions and physical cues to really maintain that situational awareness while focusing on the board, but taking in so much more with each eye movement. Our ability to interpret opponents' behaviors, that's eye tracking. Our ability to make faster and more accurate decisions, that's visual processing speed. Ability to read a busy table, that's figure ground awareness. Our ability to avoid tilting, that's sustained visual attention. Spotting betting patterns with an opponent, that's our visual memory, where there's visual spatial and visual sequential memory. Our ability to not be fatigued and have performance be steady, especially in these marathon tournaments that so many players are in. That's binocular coordination and making sure your brain is not on overdrive trying to use the inside and outside muscles of the eyes in synergy so it can actually process information. And I think one of the really neat pieces of this is vision and emotional regulation. That's our ability to read tells or hide tells. And functional vision, it's related to how you can detect somebody's facial cues, how you can look at, what's going on around you, but also process this all simultaneously and then not allow performance to shift with time, because poker performance absolutely depends less on what somebody sees. It's not eyesight. It's so much more on how well the brain can process visual information, especially under pressure, where we know under pressure, our brain operates differently and our visual system 100% operates differently in that fight or flight response. We get really focal, really central. It's almost like we're looking through paper towel holders. Our vision becomes tunneled, and then we're not able to see peripherally or process peripherally, which changes divergent thinking, changes critical decision making. When you're in a state of fight or flight, that's not the time to be making these critical decisions. And we can get our brains to a point where they are fluidly, effectively, and efficiently processing all that's going on in our environment, especially in a poker setting.
That's fantastic. And I mean, you've given us, as well as some broader examples, which are not purely related to seeing our opponents and picking up tells. I'm imagining, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I used to play a lot of online poker, and I have multiple screens right now here where I'd have tables spread across those multiple screens. And I would imagine that given the little things that have been picked up in that initial test, if I tried to play now, I'd really struggle. Certainly, it's fatiguing anyway, playing for 12 hours across multiple screens. But the kind of work you do, and maybe this will be a good time to start talking about the Screen Fit program, that would improve my ability to sustain my effort across multiple tables and multiple screens?
Without question, improve it. And I would say drastically improve it if there are areas of opportunity, if there are problems there. I mean, it's an entirely different set of visual demands playing online poker versus in three-dimensional space.
Yeah.
And both have significant challenges, but as humans, we're not meant to be staring at screens. We're not meant to be blasting this high energy light at us for hours on end, taking in all the brightness, the glare, the contrast, the visual stimuli. Our eyes and brains don't know what to do with that information. And I would imagine if you're playing online poker, there's likely more than one game on the screen or screens, and you're likely playing for hours on end, where no brain can efficiently function in terms of vision at the same level for hours without taking a break, which means anybody who's doing online poker would benefit from optimizing the eye-brain connection.
Fantastic. So let's just talk about your programs. You've got two programs, Screen Fit, which is the online vision training program, which I'm going through at the moment. And then there's the 5-day intensive at your practice near Bethesda, which I'd like to do actually. I just want you to just share what each of those programs look like and what benefit could someone, let's say a poker player, going through those programs expect?
Absolutely. So view Screen Fit as kind of like doing body weight work instead of going to the gym. If you do the right work and it's creative and you're motivated and you're compliant, you're going to get into better shape. But going to a gym, working with a trainer one-on-one and having access to strength and flexibility and cardio and machines and equipment with a customized program, it's going to be better results faster. So, of course, not everybody has access to that or the ability to do that. So with Screen Fit, it's basically an online self-paced visual training program with different courses. Each course has 30 lessons. Each lesson takes 10 to 15 minutes to do. There's a video describing what to do. You put the video down and then you execute the exercise. And it's intended to have no equipment required. These are visual exercises that you can do in the bathroom, in between Zoom calls, at a stoplight, or while you're at a poker table or in between games. And I have so many patients and clients who have developed pregame rituals based off of optimizing the vision and eye-brain connection, or use these, especially in the poker world, to get in the head of their opponents, because the opponents are like, what are you doing? Stretching your eyes and going from near to far, and it really messes with their mind. So it's designed to create the exact visual skills and abilities and support those needed for reading, for learning, for driving, for life, for all the activities of daily living. We've had thousands of patients go through it. 100% of people who have finished the program have seen a reduction in symptoms. And I almost want to knock wood every time I say that. We've had as young as 5, as old as 89. This was created to allow people to take that step across the start line and get rolling with their vision improvement journey. The intensive program is basically that program on steroids, entirely customized. So we see every week people from around the world who fly in for this 5-day boot camp. It's customized. There's an evaluation beginning of the week, end of the week. We're doing about 12 hours of work during the week. But you're working one-on-one with our doctors. You were creating a program that's relying on really cool high tech like virtual reality, augmented reality, eye tracking computers, with also really low tech things, but really raising to your awareness how you're taking in space, how you're using your visual system, so we can then use the eyes to rewire the brain and allow all these systems to be optimized. It's also an amazing opportunity to become, in most cases, way less dependent on glasses or contacts. And we've now had close to 100% accuracy with our adults who've come in for the intensives, where they've either reduced their dependence on near reading glasses, become less dependent on them, or in some cases, even eliminated the need for them, because it's a program that, even though we have age-related changes to our visual system, can help teach you how to exercise this connection so that the inside muscles of the eyes have better stamina, better flexibility. And this is not possible with certain other programs. And I would have said 5 years ago this wasn't possible, but what we're doing now, it's allowing eyesight to improve, but more importantly, vision to improve with the right work and the right specific work that's based off of where you are and where you need to go.
Fascinating. Well, as I say, I'm already impressed with the ScreenFit program. One of the things I would say to anybody contemplating is it's easily fit within your daily schedule. I was talking to you earlier about how I've been extremely busy, but I have managed to fit in the opening lessons within my day, because they're nice and compact. If somebody said you've got to spend an hour on working on this every day, no chance. But it's minutes. It's minutes. And
there are exercises you can do while you're brushing your teeth.
Absolutely.
Right? If you stack it on different things in life, it becomes something that's just much easier to work on. And when you start to see things improve and change, then it's kind of like, all right, I'd be silly not to keep going with this.
Absolutely. So something else I want to just discuss with you now, Bryce, is, and it came from when we first met, we had a discussion about the impact of your work in the performance field. And as somebody who has studied flow neuroscience and used those techniques with my clients, something that really struck me in terms of an overlap between our work was one thing that's known is from the flow, what's called the flow cycle, is that after a period of deep work, the brain really likes to have, and in fact, it's part of the flow cycle, a period of release. And the absolute ideal release is to go and do something light and physical. And we also know that nature is a flow trigger. So I will advise to my clients, if they've maybe studied poker for what is an optimal period of time, it's about 90 minutes, and then you have a break, to go and try and walk and in nature. Now, what really interests me is what's going on there. Why is nature so effective as a flow trigger? Because it's interesting. Einstein reportedly had a lot of his insights while out fishing after his work in the lab. And although this neuroscience wasn't available then, it seems likely what was happening was the release effect of the flow cycle. Does the work you do have any insights as to what's going on there?
I love that we're talking about this. So if you think about evolutionarily, what vision is for, right? It was for us to scan the horizon outside in natural lighting for exploring for danger and dinner and protecting us for the saber-toothed tiger that's coming at us. Vision is intended to help us navigate our three-dimensional world. So we want to use that visual system regularly for what it's designed for, to follow motion. Movement de-stresses our visual system. And we can get into what I call optic flow through movement that is self-generated, navigating through space to allow images to pass by to really de-stress our visual system. So when the human visual system is under stress, what happens is our pupils widen and we get locked in with this tunnel vision. And that is a state that we all get in when we are on screens and when we're locked in up close, or when we're with sustained near visual concentration tasks where our vision, our attention, our behavior all become tunneled in. So by taking breaks, by getting up, by going outside, we're literally using vision to regulate our nervous system, to pull us out of that state of fight or flight, but then to allow us to access areas of our brain that we would not be able to tap into the same way when we're in this stress response. And near point stress is the root cause of the vast majority of functional vision problems. And I can't imagine a more visually stressful environment than playing a bunch of poker games online with money involved, performance and pressure involved. But even in a three-dimensional world, I know we were talking briefly initially about the World Series of Poker tournament and how, you're in an auditorium and there's all of this light and a lot of it's junk lighting and people and movement and commotion, where vision is our dominant sensory system. And it should be tying together all the input from all of other systems to allow us to feel safe. But when we are stressed and our visual system becomes locked up and it's like we're looking through paper towel holders, literally our brain function changes. So there's certain vision exercises that many of my patients say, well, I do my peripheral pointing or my peripheral expansion exercise, and I can immediately pull myself out of that fight or flight state. And a lot of that occurs driving over a bridge or in a tunnel where all of a sudden you're aware of what you weren't aware of and become that much more locked in. But for athletes in particular, when the game is on the line or when you have to make a critical decision, to be able to effortlessly, subconsciously tap into our vision to give us an advantage, that's something we all have access to, but most people don't even know where that switch is to turn it on.
Oh, that's excellent. And okay, well, let's now just talk about some applications of these ideas in a real world context. Obviously, we've talked about the programs. That's a much more systematic way of elevating our game around these issues. But I'd like you to just talk about the 20-20-20 protocol. Explain what that is. And then I'd like to explore with you how we can maybe, in an online poker context or a live poker context, adopt that. So let's see if you can talk about what the protocol is and what it's designed to do.
And I think we're going to tweak this and come up with a poker protocol that's different than that, or at least a version of that. So what that means is, with screen time, with any near visual stress, taking a break at least every 20 minutes for at least 20 seconds and looking at something at least 20 feet away. So essentially taking a vision break, disengaging that locked up focusing and eye coordination system to allow our eyes to get a rest, to get our brain to take a deep breath, but then to be able to re-engage at a higher level without having adaptation be tapped into. I know a lot of poker players who are even amateurs who say they do the 20-20-20 rule every time the dealer pulls out a card. They look at it and then they look away. And I know there's so much psychology behind poker and so much strategy that's with verbal, nonverbal cues, body cues, but to be able to have better balance and better equilibrium in every aspect of life, that helps us really tap into the areas of higher level processing and allows us to not have performance drop over time. So I think poker and performance It depends less on what you're seeing, but more on how well your brain can process this visual information under pressure. An application like this allows pressure to not influence you the same way. So taking vision breaks is so important, and it seems a little silly to many, but if you're on if some people probably recognize they don't even look away from their screen for hours, or they don't look away from a table for hours, and that's putting their system under that state of fight or flight.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this protocol and its adaptability to live and online poker. I mean, for live, I think one solution, and something I definitely recommend to players I work with, and when I'm playing myself, I do, is when you're out of a hand, and live poker is relatively slow in terms of the action, you can stand up out of your chair.
Yeah.
And firstly, move your body, because there's lots of evidence that moving helps our brain. It's not just a case of, oh, I'm a bit stiff because I've been sat here for hours. That usually is the case. Certainly for me, it is. But also moving our body is beneficial. But also, I guess one thing we could now add on with your protocol is, okay, I know you're not going to, if you're stood in the card room at, the World Series at Paris or Horseshoe, be able to look out of the windows and see a beautiful vista. But would it still be beneficial to maybe just have a soft gaze at the far corners of the room and to get the kind of benefits you're talking about?
Absolutely. And not only beneficial, I mean, it's going to change how you perform over time.
Yeah.
And within ScreenFit, you'll learn how to have soft gaze and how to relax your focus and diverge your eyes and get into more panoramic viewing. Definitely getting up, definitely moving helps you access periphery so much more easily. But you can also learn how to do that by just looking straight ahead, but then taking in more and opening up periphery actively, where no one knows what you're doing, but from your standpoint, you're placing your gaze and throwing it into the distance, and then you're pulling it back, but you're having better flexibility and then stamina there. So I think getting up, moving around if possible, taking vision breaks, taking blinking breaks. I mean, the average person blinks 15 times a minute. When we look at a screen, it goes to 3 to 5 times a minute, which then causes the brain to secrete your tear film in a different consistency, and your eyes dry out. You get digital vision disorder. You get dry eye syndrome, literally from just not blinking.
Okay.
Or doing incomplete blinks. So there's so many easy wins everybody can tap into now, where we can allow that eye-brain connection to really be functioning where it's supposed to be.
That's really interesting, because that then offers an alternative for what I was thinking about online, because online is more challenging, I think, in this regard, because the pace of action is faster. You're playing multiple tables at once, and it really is hard to step up and look away from your screen from any period of time, because things are literally happening all the time. Tell me a little bit, I mean, could a player just basically get some kind of benefit from still looking at the screen, but actively saying, every now and then I'm going to blink. I'm going to try and consciously blink.
Every blink is almost like taking a picture and a micro snapshot, so your brain can make sense of the information that it's receiving.
Yeah.
And every blink allows you to tap into visual memory. I mean, you can look at a hand that's drawn, blink, or just keep your eyes closed. When you've developed visual memory capacity, you can see that hand as if it's right in front of you. And then to be able to do the mental math or tap into your strategy that you've trained on, that allows you to be so much more divergent in your thinking and allows you to plan what's coming and really tap into your intuition rather than just making decisions based off of a stress response.
That's great. And I mean, I suppose I was thinking again, and we were discussing this earlier before the podcast began, but I mean, we get 5-minute breaks if you're a tournament online player. You've got, if you're a cash game player online, you've always got the choice of having a break. Whether that's incentivized in any given moment, if you're at a really great table and you don't want to lose your seat and you want to maximize the profit against weaker players, that may be something you don't choose to do. But 5 minutes is what you get. And obviously that 5 minutes is a pretty precious period. We have to attend to our various other human bodily needs during that 5-minute break. But I guess a good protocol, therefore, would be, and it's certainly something I used to do, was just open my outside door and just literally stand outside and look outside for a minute. I didn't do it for that reason, because you've been educating me about this. I just wanted to get some fresh air and just relax. And interestingly, I just felt instinctively relaxed by not being at the screen and by being outside and looking outside. So would you say that will have a benefit?
Without question. I mean, your gaze is so powerful, and it's really kind of the missing piece of your presence. So to be able to go outside and just pull yourself out of the situation you're in, it's a regame. It's an opportunity to reboot. And that can be achieved many other ways. But I would say the more we can get up and get moving around, the more we can really return at our full capacity. And I would imagine I would hope players look at analytics for how they perform at the start of tournaments, towards the end, or at the beginning of an online session versus the end. I mean, I work with so many people who, before seeing us, they don't even schedule important meetings in the afternoon because they're so drained and so taxed, and they recognize they're not able to tap into the critical decision-making and the divergent thinking that they would want to. And this is one of the most visually stressful sports there is. Yeah. I started working with a lot of professional gamers, and it's the same type of thing. I mean, we are locked in at a 2D distance with all of this brightness, contrast, glare blasting our eyes and brains, which are not intended to be able to handle that much stress for that long.
Fantastic. So there we go. The Screen Fit and the 5-day intensive are your gold standard options. But, there's something that people can take away and use today. Just try to relax your vision every now and then. You may not get many opportunities online, but those short breaks, and even just blinking, even if you're still having to look at your screen, just blink. That's a really great, zero cost protocol. It's just remembering to do it.
And can we go over one more so people have at least a take home?
Absolutely.
So I call them eye push-ups. It's a near-far focusing activity. This is a great exercise that helps with clarity, with focus, and with flexibility with these different muscle systems. So cover up an eye with one hand, take your thumb with the other hand, start it at arm's length. You want to bring it close to you, watching that thumb until it gets a little blurry, and then stop, make it clear, hold it for 5 seconds, then look out into the distance for 5 seconds, relax your focus, look soft, back at your finger for 5, back in the distance. So it's a gross stimulation, relaxation, stimulation, relaxation. If we can think about the focusing system of our eyes as like an old school camera lens, if we get that system operating on autofocus, so much more effective and so much more beneficial than being stuck on manual focus. And so this eye push-ups, you want to do it same amount of time right eye as you do left eye. Many people notice one of their eyes can actually focus on the thumb closer than the other, which means under 2-eye conditions, you're focusing your eyes at different planes. But then also, this is the type of thing that work over time compounds. So let's say you can get that thumb a centimeter closer after a week, or even a millimeter closer. Weeks add up. Centimeters turn into inches. Inches turn into feet. And then eventually you get to a point where you're so much less dependent on the support that you have with glasses or reading glasses, or even the glasses you have. I know I've worked with a few poker players who say, at least in the virtual space, almost everybody's got glasses on when they're doing it, if they're in their 40s or above.
Absolutely.
And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but you're relying on those lenses to be crutches so that your brain literally is not tapping into that system.
Yeah.
Which you can function well at, but imagine if your brain's able to fire on all cylinders, so many more airplanes can take off and land where they're supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. What you said completely resonates with me and was very much my experience. So, yeah. What I'm going to say here before I come to my final question to anybody watching and listening, Screen Fit and the 5-day intensive programs, we're going to put links in the show notes. There's a very generous discount available if you use the code MINDSET. And so definitely check that out. Get in touch anyway and explore what it can do for you. Because as you've learned today already, this goes way beyond eyesight. I definitely wish I'd looked after my eyesight more once I started playing online poker, because I went into it despite being a lawyer and reading lots with perfect eyesight. And guess what? It didn't take long to need glasses. But beyond that, there are all these performance upgrades. And, that really motivates me, frankly, even more than my eyesight itself. It's the focus. It's the emotional stability, or the lack of it, that can come when you start to get fatigued. That is huge. So that's really great.
And if you look at any change in eye movement as a change in attention, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, if you're not controlling your eyes as well as you should, you're not controlling your mind as well as it should. And mental focus and visual focus are intimately related. So we're giving a huge discount here. The ScreenFit program is under $500. We're going to give $200 off to your community, because the poker world needs to be using vision as that lever for performance. Because if they don't, this is just such low-hanging fruit. Absolutely. And we want to make it easy for people to just get started, even though, that's going to be life-changing for some and then just helpful for others, depending on where you're starting from. Absolutely. And as always, the way to think of these investments is, what's your average buy-in? If it's a buy-in for a small tournament, well, if you can get a performance upgrade, then, you're going to pay for that easily. That's before we even think about the life quality issues of having improved vision. So, as always, invest in yourself, everybody. Think about that. Let me just ask one final question, and maybe this will flow from everything we've discussed, but what is the one thing about vision that you wish everyone understood? Maybe thinking particularly about this audience. Yeah. So I would say if you're having trouble sleeping, you're going to go to your primary care, health coach, functional medicine doctor. If you're having headaches, you may see a neurologist. If you're getting motion sick or dizzy or disoriented, you may see an ENT or an otolaryngologist. But with almost any symptom, we need to all consider that vision could be and is likely a part of the problem. And so I really want everyone to just have the main take home be, we need to all be putting our vision first, thinking that's at least related and a piece of the puzzle. And that means going to see an eye doctor or getting the right work in place, but way beyond just whether you need glasses, because there's so much more to vision than just 20/20 eyesight. Perfect. Well, Bryce, thank you so much for your time. I know you're an extremely busy fellow, but I really appreciate you sharing this, and I really hope that people act on what they've heard today. I certainly am, because it's just what we do on the Mindset Advantage podcast. It's about going beyond how to understand how to play well. It's actually performing. It's actually making sure that we actually realize our potential. All that technical work about learning how to play certain situations well is undermined if we lose our focus, if we lose our emotional control. And this is the kind of work that feeds into that. So thank you so much again for your time. Such a pleasure, an honor to be here, and love this conversation. Appreciate you having me on. That's great. Thank you, Bryce. So many thanks to Dr. Appelbaum for his time and insights. This is yet another reminder that high performance in poker and other fields comes from much more than technical study. And the best of the best combine technical study with consistent attempts to look for edges wherever they may be found. And very often that's away from the immediate technical study and development of the immediate skills of the game. And also thank you for listening and watching. If you enjoy this podcast, please hit like and subscribe and rate us on your podcast platform. I look forward to seeing you next time on the Mindset Advantage podcast. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. To get future episodes delivered to you automatically, make sure to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting service. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit pokermindcoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.